The penultimate college football playoff rankings are out. We have so much to react to here, so let's not waste any more of your time. Let's throw them up here. We're going to try to get a little crazy, a little cute here. I'm going to try to do here, because I'm saying this as I'm recording. I've yet to do it after. I've got to do this after the fact, edit it back in. So if I can't do it, my apologies. I'll still explain it anyway. But I'm going to try to do here is put up at the same time my rankings and the committee's rankings to highlight how similar they are. If I can't do it, I'll still explain it for you here. Let's just assume I can't. The only rankings I disagree with, and when it comes to the bracket format, is I would have Arizona State the 11th seed and Alabama the 12th. Otherwise, I am in lockstep with the committee. I think the committee did an outstanding job. You know me. I'm not afraid to criticize the committee. We've been doing that on a lot of these videos here. But I think here they deserve praise. They nailed these rankings. From Ohio State dropping down to the 8th seed, where it was a bad loss to Michigan. Don't get me wrong. But I think with what Ohio State's been able to accomplish this season in beating Penn State, in beating Indiana, in losing to Oregon by 1 on the road, I think their 10-2 resume is good enough to still host a playoff game. So I think the committee got it right where they put Ohio State, at least in terms of the bracket, at the 8th seed, which means they're the last team to host a playoff game. They got that right. And they also got it right in keeping Alabama in and leaving Miami out. That is the big discussion point here. That's the big discussion everyone's having. Who deserves to be in, Alabama or Miami, for that last at-large spot? And I think the committee absolutely nailed it in putting Alabama in and leaving Miami out, because this is not just a 1-month reflection. This is a full 12-game culmination, right? And when you look at the full season resume of Alabama versus the full 12-game resume of Miami, it ain't close who's better. It's not even debatable. It is Alabama by a country mile. Let's just break it down really fast here. Alabama's best win is who? Georgia, right? Who is currently right now a top 5 team in the committee's rankings. Who is Miami's best win? Louisville? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, really impressive there. Alabama, 3 wins over current top 25 teams. Miami, 0. I get Alabama has 1 extra loss, right? 3 compared to 2 from Miami. But Miami, look at their 2 losses. Both came to unranked opponents at the time they played. So they're not even great losses, and quote unquote great losses. So when you look at strength of schedule, Alabama, 17, Miami, 55. Where in any of these resumes can you look at it and point to me that Miami is the more deserving and better team than Alabama? You can't. There is no area you can look at and say Miami deserves to be in over Alabama. Sure, Bama has 1 extra loss, but they played a tougher schedule. They have better wins. Miami doesn't have any of those. They have bad losses, no good wins. They played in a softer conference and a softer schedule. It's not Alabama's fault that Miami couldn't make the ACC title game. Well, like, what are we doing? How is this even a debate? It's not even close. Alabama's resume, season, it has been better, and they are more deserving of it than Miami. I don't want to hear about SEC or Alabama bias. Watch the games. See how these 2 seasons have gone. Because for Miami, by the way, it's not just the fact that they're 10-2, or they only lost 2 games. Let's look at it where if they should have lost to Virginia Tech, if not for bad officiating, should have lost the following week at Cal, but didn't because of bad officiating, we should be talking about an 8-4 Miami team. Let's not pretend that Miami has been dominant in every game they played in outside of their 2 losses. Not the case at all. Not the case at all. So they played an unimpressive schedule. They really haven't dominated it whatsoever. 2 games they won, they got lucky and absolutely should not have won. Lost 2 other games to 2 ranked opponents. 0 ranked wins. No impressive win in general. Where is the path? What are we doing? This is not a debate. It's not even close. Alabama, every single day and twice on Sunday, deserves to be in the college football playoff over Miami. It is not debatable. Credit to the committee. They got it right. Interesting. Not even interesting. Frustrating is probably the better word to say. But what's interesting now is maybe the better segue to say is that when you look at conference championship weekend and you look at the bracket and you think, okay, who can still make it in? Who's on the outside that can maybe sneak their way in? The college football playoff, the 12-team playoff, for the most part is set. Now, some teams you don't know, right? Mountain West, Boise State, UNLV winners in. Big 12, Arizona State, Iowa State winners in. But those two conferences, right, it just winners in, losers out. The only drama we really have going into conference championship weekend is if Clemson is able to play spoiler. Because the Big 12 is already accounted for, the Group of Five is already accounted for. Alabama right now, the last current at-large bid, they're in no danger. Like, those conference games don't matter for them. They're in no matter what. But what can turn this playoff upside down is if Clemson upsets SMU. Because now that they are a bid stealer, and now all of a sudden you open up a discussion for, okay, who gets the last at-large bid? Is it SMU or is it Alabama? I think in this case, the ponies win that argument. It should be SMU in over Alabama, even if they lose to Clemson in the ACC title game, because you can't punish SMU for playing an extra game that they earned that Alabama didn't. SMU is in the ACC title game, right? Alabama's at home. They weren't good enough to go to the SEC title game. They couldn't take care of business in the regular season to put themselves in the conference championship game. Why then would you turn around and say, well, SMU, if they didn't play in the ACC title game, is guaranteed a spot, right? They're sitting there right now, currently ranked 8th. If they didn't play this weekend, they're not moving. You already had Ward Manuel say, hey, if you're not playing, you're not moving. So why would you then drop SMU behind Alabama at 11 for playing a game they were good enough to earn and Alabama wasn't? I get different conferences, but I don't think you can justify punishing SMU for playing on conference championship weekend and reward Alabama for essentially being bad enough to not make the SEC title game. I don't think you will see outside, again, of the Big 12 and the Mountain West, you will not see a conference championship game loser be eliminated from the college football playoff. So I think if SMU loses, I still think they're in and Alabama is out. That's the only intriguing storyline. That's it. Everyone else, for the most part, is set. If SMU wins, the only drama we have is seeding, right? Like who will be seeded where. And that's still important. And obviously that will make, I think, these games intriguing still. So there's reason to watch this weekend. But in terms of who's in, who's out, who can kind of sneak their way in outside the top 12, who can fall out of the top 12 if they're already in it. The only team that's in, there's the only teams that are right now, only team I should say, in danger of falling out is Alabama. And that's if Clemson wins, because I think SMU would slide down, but they would still be in, rightfully so. So that's really the only drama we have in terms of who's in and who's out heading into conference championship weekend. I want to throw out the bracket again, because I want to highlight something here. There's a huge discrepancy I think it has to be fixed, and that is the fact that the path for the number 1 seed versus the number 5 seed is ridiculously different. And this has to be changed moving forward. Whether it's 2025, 2026, I think the best thing you got to do here is reseed once you get to round number 2. Because you cannot have a situation to where you look at it from Penn State's perspective, right? If they lose the Big Ten title game and they sit there at the 5 seed, they then play most likely Arizona State and then face a second round matchup against Boise State. 2 games that they'll be pretty heavy favorites in, right? When you look at it, if Oregon wins the Big Ten, they get a first round bye, which is huge, right? Again, one less game you got to worry about, get healthy, and one less chance of you getting upset and having your season over. Bye is very important. But then you come out of the bye, and your second round matchup is either Ohio State, who I saw is one of the most talented teams in the country, or Tennessee, who has an explosive offense when they're clicking, a great defense, and a ton of talent. You're telling me if you're Oregon, your reward as being the number 1 seed and winning the Big Ten is facing a second round matchup of either Tennessee or Ohio State. And if Penn State loses and they have the 5 seed, their reward is facing Arizona State and Boise State. 2 games which they'll be heavy favorites in. That you can't have that discrepancy. You can't have it to where the losers of the conference championship game have it better than the winners. It cannot be that way. So the best advice I have, or the best suggestion to prevent this from happening again going forward, is just simply reseeding to where the top 4 conference champions still get the bye. I still like that. I still think making conference championship games important and relevant, I think, matters. I don't want to diminish their value. So still think getting a bye by being a conference champ should stay, but simply just reseed. To where, if you're Oregon, you're playing the worst team. If Arizona State, let's say, upsets Penn State, then their second round matchup should be against Oregon. Oregon shouldn't be facing Ohio State while Arizona State faces Boise State. That to me, that is not right. That should not be the way it is. Just simply reseed so that Oregon plays the worst team that wins in round number 1, and the 4 seed in Boise State plays the best team that wins in round number 1. Very simple, right? I think that's the way, to me, it should be. That way you still make it, intriguing, some of these games on conference championship weekend, but you also reward them for winning those games and not essentially punish Oregon for winning the Big Ten, while Penn State, again, it's a risk, right? And so we got to play the game, but they'll be heavy favorites against Arizona State in State College and heavy favorites against Boise State on a neutral field. You'll take that path every time. You'll take losing the Big Ten championship every time if you're Penn State right now, or even Oregon as well. You can't have it to where the loser of a conference championship game is rewarded with a better path compared to the winner. Simply just reseed, and that change needs to be made, I would say, next year. Right? Why wait? It's very simple. Just reseed. Nothing else changes. Reseed the top 4 after the first round and make it fair to where you're not punishing the number 1 and number 2 seed by giving them a more difficult path compared to the loser, let's say, of a conference championship game or a lower seeded team as well. Doesn't make any sense. Ward Manuel, I just told you before, he said to ESPN on Tuesday night, he said, if you ain't playing, you ain't moving, which means Miami's sitting there at 12, Ole Miss sitting there at 13, and South Carolina sitting there at 14. They are officially eliminated from the college football playoff. Their hopes are done. And you know what? Rightfully so. Rightfully so. And I want to give the committee credit here as well. But I told you, big love fest here on this video. Because they did not cave to the public pressure. And I think there's a minority of folks. They were very loud. They were pounding the drum loudly and consistently over the last few weeks for South Carolina. But I don't think it was a large majority that thought this, but maybe just a loud vocal minority that thought South Carolina deserved to be in the college football playoff. And I give the committee a lot of credit because they said, really, no shot in hell. We hear you. We don't care what you're saying. You are nowhere close. When they sit there at 14, behind Ole Miss, behind Alabama, even behind Miami, the committee got it right because when you look at those 3 teams, let's take Miami out of it for a second here. Those 3 SEC teams, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. If you were saying, right, that you thought South Carolina deserves to be in the playoff, you're saying that you think South Carolina deserves to be in the playoff over Ole Miss and Alabama with both those teams sitting at home. There's only one more spot left for the SEC. And you think that should be to South Carolina, not the other 2 teams. Well, first and foremost here, when you look at the records, all 3 of those teams 9-3. The first thing that matters, the first tiebreaker into who should be ordered higher or not is head-to-head. Right? When you have identical records, head-to-head matters. And last time I checked, Alabama beat South Carolina. Ole Miss beat South Carolina. By the way, blew them out. Beat them by over 3 touchdowns. On the road, mind you. How can you, right there, before we go any further, how can you sell me South Carolina being deserving to be in the playoff over Alabama and Ole Miss when they lost to both teams ahead of them who all have similar records? That's, first and foremost, does not, there's no argument there. You're dead. Boom. South Carolina, no case for them. But let's just get a little deeper. Let's just get a little crazy. Let's just pretend that South Carolina and Alabama never played. Never played. No head-to-head exists. They're 9-3, but there's no head-to-head. Let's look at their resumes. We told you about Alabama's, right? Their best win is Georgia. South Carolina's best win is over Clemson. Now, I think Clemson's a little overrated, and I think a lot of people, when they saw the number 12 next to the Tigers' name, were saying, 12? How are they? What? How are they this high? Nonetheless, look, South Carolina won, hostile environment, went on the road and won. Credit to them. Clemson a little overrated, but still, nonetheless, they won the game. That was their best win. Bama's best win is better than South Carolina's best win. They both played Mizzou, by the way. Alabama won the game 34-0. Mizzou won 34-30 and needed a last-second touchdown in order to escape the Tigers at home. I would say Alabama against that common opponent, yeah, they were a lot more impressive. They also played LSU as a common opponent. Alabama won on the road 42-13. South Carolina, if you remember, lost that game 36-33 at home, by the way. So, look, I know they both played Oklahoma. Alabama lost. They both played Vanderbilt. Alabama lost. But Alabama still has better wins than South Carolina. Again, Bama, 3 wins over ranked opponents. South Carolina, 2. So when you look at, just take the head-to-head out of it for a second, Alabama has the better win, period, more ranked wins, and sure, they have some bad losses. I'm not going to discount that, but I think their wins outweigh the bad losses, and you played two teams that South Carolina either struggled against or lost to, and Alabama blew them out of the water. Blew them out. Didn't make it a game. There's no case to make for South Carolina being ahead of Alabama, even if you take out head-to-head. And again, for those that are beating the South Carolina drum, that are beating the Miami drum, I know Miami's lost 2 out of the last 3, so this is maybe not the best example for them. But the college football playoff, right, is supposed to reflect full season results. Not just how you play in November, not just how you play down the stretch, but how you play from September to November. The college football season is the shortest season of any sport. It's 12 games. You are only guaranteed 12 games. What happens in September can't be forgotten about. You can't have amnesia to South Carolina getting off to an awful start, losing games early, and think, oh, they're undefeated in November. They should be, they're in. No, that's not how it works. That's not how, you can't just pretend September did not happen. You can't just pretend you didn't lose to 2 teams ranked ahead of you in Alabama and Ole Miss and get housed by the Rebels. Can't do it. I give the committee a lot of credit here for not caving into the quote-unquote pressure and the push to get South Carolina in the playoff when they lost head-to-head and didn't deserve to be ranked ahead of either team. Head-to-head matters because if you tell me it doesn't matter, then you're saying the results on the field don't matter. If you can rank South Carolina with an even record against Alabama ahead of the Tide, despite them losing to the Tide, you're telling me the results, like what we're watching on Saturdays, is irrelevant. And that it's all about, strength of schedule and recruiting, right? Whatever you're not basing your judgments on the field, which is where everything starts and stops. Alabama's deserving to be in over Miami because their resume of what they proved on the field was better than the Hurricanes. South Carolina deserves to be behind those teams because they did not prove it on the field for a full season. They have no one to blame but themselves. Miami, same thing. They had an opportunity to go to the college football playoff. They had an opportunity to go to the ACC title game. They blew it because they couldn't get the job done. They couldn't get it done on the field. I give the committee credit because what they proved in these rankings is that what we're watching on the field is the most important thing. So I give the committee a ton of credit here. I think they nailed it. I think they got these rankings for the most part correct. I think we are set now for a college football playoff field to be released on Sunday to where all 12 teams are deserving and nobody got screwed. That's I think is what all we're asking for here, and I think what we'll get on Sunday. Speaking of Sunday, we will be back live right after the rankings are officially announced. We will go live on YouTube, so make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you are subscribed to you get an alert. If you're listening to us on my podcast feed, Hick at Night, Night spelled N-I-T-E. Make sure you get over to YouTube because I can't, unfortunately, move the live feed over to the podcast version. So make sure, again, check me out, Ryan Hickey on YouTube, subscribe. That way you can watch the show, watch the live reaction show. And also I will be tweeting out a lot of links as well on my Twitter, Ryan_Hickey and the number 3. So follow there, subscribe on YouTube. We got rankings for you coming in between that. Between now and then, we got Hick's 5-minute picks also coming your way. We'll give predictions on all the big conference championship games as well, and only just 5 minutes. So that will be, again, on YouTube and also wherever you get your pods, Hick at Night. So a lot of college football content coming your way over the next few days. Subscribe, like, you'll get all of it. A big thank you here. This is our last Tuesday night rankings video we're doing since this is the last Tuesday night that they'll be released. So thank you for joining us here, spending some of your Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, maybe even Thursday morning with us here. I know you got a lot of options, so I really do appreciate you choosing to spend a few minutes here with us to listen to what I have to say. Big thank you. Really appreciate your support. With that said, we'll talk to you Thursday. We'll talk to you Sunday. Enjoy the games, and be ready to react to everything Sunday afternoon.